So you may be looking at the title of the video and wondering, well, that doesn't make any sense. How can it be your favorite console if you ignored it? And it's a fair question, and it's one that I will spend this video answering. But first, why don't you let me know down in the comments what your favorite 3DS game was that you ever played. Feel free to add a couple in there, you don't have to just narrow it down to one. And maybe share some stories about your favorite times with the 3DS. And we'll get started with the video. So first, I'll just very briefly talk about my history with the 3DS console and the DS before that. So I really liked the Nintendo DS originally. My brother and I got one at the same time. We played loads of games on there. Things like Pokemon, obviously Nintendogs, we really like Nintendogs. There's a Spider-Man game that I remember being into, a racing game, I think it was Asphalt. We tried to get into a couple of Zeldas, there's Advanced Wars, there's a Professor Layton game, although I think we're a bit young for that, we find the puzzles quite difficult. But then when the 3DS released in 2011, I just wasn't interested, neither of us were. I'm not really sure exactly why it was. At the time, I'd just got to uni, and I think really, while I was into gaming, my gaming focus was more on multiplayer games. I was really into online shooters, MOBAs, League of Legends, things like that. That's sort of what we were playing at the time. Although, to be fair to me, looking back, I have since realised that the initial 3DS launch wasn't very good. There weren't very many games on there. The console was more expensive than it did become later. So, I think to be fair, it wasn't the best launch anyway, but also I just wasn't very interested in those types of games at the time. But then it reduced in price, and I think Super Mario 3D Land was sort of what got a lot of Nintendo fans on board, and that didn't really interest me either. And even when Pokemon X and Y came out in, I think it's 2013, and bear in mind that we really liked Pokemon, still wasn't very interested in it, didn't pick one up even then. It wasn't until 2015 that I did eventually pick up a 3DS, and I'm not really sure what the catalyst for that was, I can't quite remember. It's possible that it's when I realised that Super Smash Bros. Had come out on the 3DS, because in the end the 3DS that I got was that Super Smash Bros. Special Edition, the one in red, which I really like. So it could have been that even though it's a year later than when it actually came out, it's just that 2015 is when I realised it was there. It also could have been, I think I'd gotten out of uni and I'd gotten my first job, my first proper job, and so I actually had some money, maybe I had a bit of money burning a hole in my pocket, and younger me was like, oh, what can I spend it on? So yeah, it probably a mix of wanting to get Smash Bros and having the money, because I did really like Smash Bros. I didn't have a GameCube, but I would go around to a friend's house and we'd play Smash on the GameCube, and then we did have a Wii, and so we would play Smash on the Wii as well, so we had a really good time with that. So I think seeing that Smash had come out on the 3DS kind of solidified that for me. And at that point, I started to look around at what other games there were. So that's when I got Pokemon, I got Mario Kart, I got Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, which I played a lot. That's probably the game I played most on the 3DS. I got Fire Emblem Awakening as well, and I played that a fair bit. I think I played the first half of that game 3 or 4 times, something like that. And then, I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I just kind of stopped playing it. Slowly but surely, I kind of gave up, and I just went back to the other games. I went back to what I was into before. The online shooters, games like Call of Duty, League of Legends, that kind of thing. I did occasionally pick up new titles. I bought Link Between Worlds, but I barely played it. And I bought Pokemon Sun, and I bought, I think, Alpha Sapphire, and I didn't really play those very much either. And I just think generally my gaming focus wasn't the same as it is now. I was kind of into those hardcore, online games, the games you could grind for hours and hours and hours. And I didn't know anybody at the time who had a 3DS. I'm kind of a bit of I like to talk about games, I like to share experiences with games and play them with other people. I think the fact that I didn't know anybody at all who had a 3DS didn't help with my interest in that console. But the thing is that in recent years, my priorities, the things that I like in games, that's definitely shifted. I'm less about those games like I said they were hardcore games, the online shooters, the MOBAs, League of Legends, Dota, that kind of thing. I'm less about that. I don't want to sweat and try really hard every single round of my life. I'm kind of more into the games that I can just sit down, have a good time, play for as little or as long as I like. I still like to, play games that other people are playing, like my friends are playing, things like that, and talk about shared experiences and things like that, but I'm less on that sort of hardcore online multiplayer wave now. I barely play any games like that these days. I don't even really play League of Legends anymore, and for like 7 years that was a huge part of my life. And part of that is that I just generally am after a different experience. First of all, I don't really like going and shutting myself away on my computer, because it's upstairs, it's in like an office room, and if I'm up there then I don't really get to hang out with my family. And if I want to use the telly, I do have some home consoles. If I want to use a telly, then it kind of clashes with what everybody else wants to do. I do use the telly sometimes for gaming, but on the whole, what I tend to do now is I tend to play handheld games. You know, I think I've talked about this before, but Switch and Steam Deck, that's sort of what I play the most now, those handheld games. So most of my gaming time really is just sat on the sofa, hanging out with my family, and just playing something casual. You know, at the moment it's things like Pokemon and Fire Emblem, but something casual, you know, that I can pause it at any time. You know, if I need to get up and do something, I can stop at any time. And I just sort of like generally have a fun time, but in more of a casual way, I suppose, rather than right, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to play League of Legends for 45 minutes at the very minimum. I'm going to sweat and I'm going to really try hard and absolutely go for it, and I'm really disappointed if I lose. No, I'm not, that's how it used to be, and I'm not like that anymore at all. So like I said, I've been playing mostly the Switch, recently the Steam Deck, but mostly over the last couple of years it's been the Switch. And while I do like the Switch a lot, now that I look back at the 3DS, there are things about that console that I think I prefer over the Switch. The 3DS just feels more personal to me, and that starts with the size. I'm not really sure why, but just the fact that it's smaller and it is the size that you could put it in your pocket, you could take it around with you everywhere. I think the fact that you could take it with you everywhere already makes it feel more personal. I'm not really sure why, but then on top of that, you can add more personality to it. You know, there's so many different versions of consoles. I've got a couple, they have different designs on them. You've got the 3DS, the new 3DS, the XLs, the 2DS, all of them have different special editions. So you've already got quite a variety there. And then on top of that, themes and the badges on the home screen, like those really, why are they not on the Switch? They add so much personality to your console. They really make it your own. It's your little 3DS. And the fact that it's not on the Switch is just crazy, I think. But it's just another thing which makes it more personalized to you. It makes it special to you. And then, you know, if you've got a load of friends and everybody's got 3DSs, you kind of have this thing where it's like, oh, what 3DS do you have? You know, what does yours look like? What theme do you have? You know, you almost have that extra layer of discussion. I don't know if discussion is the right word, but you have something more to talk about where you sort of like, oh, look, I got this new theme the other day. Let me show you. Or, oh, look, I went to the Pin Badge arcade and I got this new badge. This is so cool. The Switch has nothing like that. Everybody's Switch, bar like slightly different colored Joy-Cons and a couple of special editions, everybody's Switch is basically the same. And also, loads of people's Switches, I'm pretty sure, don't even leave the dock. They just stay in the dock all day, every day because, and fair play, you know, if that's how you want to play your Switch, that's, you know, that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying people shouldn't play their Switch as a home console, because they absolutely should do. But it takes away that personality. Nobody's PlayStation or Xbox feels that personal to them, do they? There's something about handheld gaming, and then more so customizable handheld gaming, that feels much more personal, I think. And then just to sort of round that off, the way that the 3DS tracks playtime is so much better and so much more interesting, and again, more personal. I know I keep saying that. It tracks it all the way down to the minute, and also, you know, you can go in and you can see so many cool different stats. You can see which game you played the most. You can see which game you opened the most number of times. You can see like average playtime, things like that. You can see exactly when you first played a game. So like I wasn't sure when I got my 3DS, I couldn't find the details, but I knew that Smash was the first game I got on it. So I opened my 3DS, I looked at the playtime, and it said I played it in 2015. And that, you definitely don't have that on a Switch. The Switch's playtime tracking is just such a watered down version. It's boring, you know? It's not interesting. I like stats and looking at numbers and things like that, and it's just interesting every now and then to look back and see what games you played the most and just sort of like reminisce on that kind of thing. I really wish I could do that on the Switch. I really do. And then we come to Street Pass as well, just to sort of round off the overall 3DS experience. Not talking about games yet, just the experience of the console. Street Pass, honestly, is such a genius feature. Because the 3DS was so small and you could just close it and it was pretty safe, you put it in your pocket, you take it around with you everywhere. Being able to cross paths with somebody else, get a little hit from them, and, you know, use them to play these fun little Nintendo mini games that they don't really make anymore, that used to have so much personality. Just things like that. That already has an element of fun. But then also it just shared a little bit of information. Not like loads of personal information, but you just, you know, whatever name that person had picked for their Mii. Was it called a Mii back then? I'm not sure if it was called a Mii, but whatever name the person had picked for their character, you saw their name, you saw what they were dressed like, because you could unlock different outfits. That was really cool. And then also you could see either what game they've been playing recently, or people could highlight what their favorite game was, and that just adds a little bit to it. You know, you actually feel like you've come across a real person. I think that just knowing that little bit of information about them, it just adds a little connectivity and a little personal touch that I think is lost nowadays in online multiplayer gaming. And so all of those features together and all of that personality, all in this tiny little console, it just the experience of playing it, now that I look back, it is kind of exactly what I would love to have on the Switch, and it kind of makes the Switch feel almost cold and corporate in comparison. You know, the only customization you have is, you know, if you want to buy extra Joy-Cons and swap them around, or if you happen to get a special edition, that's it. You know, no themes. We've got like black and white themes, and that's it. You know, you can't put badges on the home screen or anything like that. There's no Street Pass. I'm really disappointed that there's no Street Pass. Everybody thought maybe something like that would come in the first couple of years, but it's not coming by now, is it? It's just not. Nintendo have decided they're not doing it anymore. And so the Switch has lost a lot of personality, I think, compared to the 3DS. If it had that Street Pass feature, I would take it with me everywhere. I would love to, you know, go into my nearest big city, see what kind of people I met, and use their avatars to play mini games. I would love that. Although the Switch is maybe a little bit too big to take around with you everywhere. So I do kind of understand partly why they did that, but I just think it's a shame. There's a bit of a missed opportunity there. So that's kind of the experience of the console. That's why I think that's really great compared to modern consoles. Now we're going to talk about the games. And while I think I kind of ignored the games at the time, it wasn't what I was into, the games on the 3DS are these days the exact kind of games that I would love to play. So as a few examples, recently I've been really into Pokemon. I played a lot of Sword and Shield, Legends Arceus when they came out, and I've been really having a good time with Violet as well. I've been playing Violet recently. On the 3DS though, I didn't really play X or Y. I've got one of them, but I didn't really play it very much. So I didn't complete that. I didn't complete Alpha Sapphire. I barely touched Sun. I think I got Sun. And I think I bought Ultra Moon, but I just didn't play it at all. I think maybe I popped it in one time, something like that, you know, I didn't play it at all. Whereas now, those are the kind of games I'll be playing. Those new Pokemon experiences, I'll be playing loads. Whereas on the Switch, we are getting new Pokemon experiences. We're also getting, in my opinion, not very good rehashes of older games. Let's Go didn't do it for me. Diamond and Pearl remakes were just terrible, I thought. They were just disappointing. Whereas, you know, the 3DS got these new ones, and they seemed like they would be pretty good times. Similarly, I got really into Fire Emblem Three Houses on the Switch, and I'm currently playing Engage, and I'm quite enjoying Engage. And then on the 3DS, there's Awakening, which I did play, but I never finished. You know, I never actually got around to finishing it. And there's Fates, which I did buy, but I didn't get very far into. And there's a third Fire Emblem game, I think it's something like Shadows of Valencia, and I didn't even buy that. I didn't even get into it. Whereas again, these days, those games, if they were coming out on the Switch instead, I would definitely be playing those. And another genre of game I've been really into recently is RPGs. And boy, oh boy, there's so many RPGs that have come out on the 3DS, aren't there, that I just completely ignored at the time. And there's franchises that I'm into now, I've been introduced to on the Switch, which I never really played on the 3DS, and there's plenty of options on the 3DS. So things like Dragon Quest, there's a good few Dragon Quest games on the 3DS. Bravely Default, I played Bravely Default 2 on the Switch. I didn't finish it, but I did have a pretty good time, and you know, there's a couple of those on the 3DS. Shin Megami Tensei is another series. You know, there's the Mario and Luigi RPGs. I've never really played any of those, and those look like my kind of thing now. Fantasy Life is one that I thought would be really interesting for me to play, and actually I think that's one that, again, everybody kind of thought a copy would come to the Switch, but it hasn't done. And just to sort of list a few more games that I've seen when I've been sort of like researching this, and I've thought, oh, I would be interested in those games. So there's Dylan's Rolling Western. That game just looks really unique. It looks very different, and a lot of people think that it's really good. There's Ever Oasis, which came out late in the 3DS's life. It was supposed to be really good, but it didn't get a lot of sales, I don't think, because it came out when the Switch was already out. But that looks like a really fun game. There's a mix of like town building and going out to loot, and then bring back resources to build up your town, and then you go out to loot and fight stronger things, and then bring back those resources. That sounds like a fun gameplay loop to me. Samus Returns, you know, I played Metroid Dread on the Switch. I completed Metroid Dread on the Switch. I really enjoyed it, and I've kind of thought, oh, Samus Returns would be fun. Again, people thought maybe it would come to the Switch, but it hasn't done. It's probably one that I would look at, you know, when it had come out on the 3DS, if I've been playing those games. Zelda, I didn't even play a Zelda game on the 3DS properly. I think I bought A Link Between Worlds. I think I bought a pack of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask or something like that. I'm not sure. I think I've got them both. And barely played them. And that, you know, Ocarina of Time is supposed to be the greatest game ever. And I did enjoy Breath of the Wild. And I remember enjoying Twilight Princess on the Switch as well. So why didn't I play those games? I just ignored them completely. And they're supposed to be great. A Link Between Worlds is supposed to be one of the best, if not the best, top-down Zeldas. I just ignored it completely. Mario 3D Land. I really enjoyed Mario 3D World when it was ported over to the Switch. So, you know, why would 3D Land be any different? Sounds like it's a great time. People say it's a little bit too easy, but I don't mind that. I'm not the best platforming player, so that probably work out really well for me. Luigi's Mansion, just a series I've never tried. Kirby games, again, I've never really tried any Kirby games. There's supposed to be some good ones like Planet Robobot, I think it's called, and there's like a triple deluxe game, I think, as well, that's supposed to be really fun on there. And the other thing is that this isn't even accounting for all of the Nintendo DS games, not just the 3DS, but the DS games that you can play, because you can play all of them on the 3DS. I've not even looked at all the DS games that I could play. You know, I did enjoy the DS a lot. I played the DS a lot, but I was much younger then. There's a good chance I missed games, or I just didn't have the money for games. So I bet there's loads of DS games that I could play on there as well. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, and I'm sorry if it's a rambly video, but what I'm trying to say is that I think that I've kind of missed out, you know, on the golden age of the 3DS, and that if the 3DS had been coming out now, these games had been coming out now, I would have been snapping them up, loving them, playing them every chance I got, really enjoying doing the Street Pass with everybody, and you know, I would have taken it with me everywhere and tried to pick up as many Street Pass hits as possible. I could see myself having put hundreds, if not thousands of hours into the system. You know, if I was doing my YouTube channel when the 3DS was coming out, then, you know, I could imagine myself talking about it on here, you know, talking about the experience of the 3DS, which one I was interested in, all the games I was interested in, you know, doing reviews, things like that. Could I do it now? I mean, I could do it now. I could, I guess, start a collection. I've got console, I've got a couple of games. I could start building out a collection properly. I could play through the games that I wanted to play. Maybe I could even talk about them on here. I don't know if people would be interested in that. So I could do it, but then the downsides are it's getting harder to pick up games, and people are probably much more interested in hearing about Switch games on channels like these rather than, you know, 3DS games, because they're old news. You know, there's not as much interest there. Not to mention the eShop's closing soon, so I wouldn't have very much time to get any digital-only games, and of course the Street Pass, I would just get no hits these days. Nobody's taking the 3DS out anymore, are they? When Nintendo announced last year that the 3DS and the Wii U eShops will be closing, I did actually sort of panic, and I went out and I picked up another 3DS console. I'd never had one of those new 3DS XL, so I picked one of those up. I got the Animal Crossing one secondhand because I just thought it was a cute little console, and I'd just come off the back of Animal Crossing New Horizons, so I picked up New Leaf and I played that for a little while. But then I did stop, and I kind of thought to myself, well, if I ignore all the modern consoles to play the 3DS, would I just have the same feelings down the line? Would I sort of like come to the end of the Switch's life and sort of lament how I'd missed out on all the new exciting Switch releases that come out? My gaming time is a lot more limited than it used to be. You know, I'm not young anymore. You know, I've got work and, you know, a life outside of games and things like that. So I wouldn't have the time to play both consoles alongside each other, I don't think. Not properly anyway. I'd be bound to missing out on something. And so would I just miss out on the Switch's golden years instead if I focused on the 3DS? It's kind of a conundrum that I don't know if it has an answer to, really. And so there we are. That's kind of why I think if it had come out at a different time, or if I'd been interested in slightly different things and those things had crossed over, I think the 3DS would have been my favorite console of all time. I think I would have had such a great time playing all these games that I'm interested in now. I think I would have had a great time picking the personalization of the 3DS, picking the different designs, the themes, the badges, things like that. Street Pass as well, I would have had a great time. I would have taken it with me everywhere and gone around doing Street Pass. And I think I would have loved talking about those games on something like this, you know, on a channel. It sort of feels like I get to share those experiences, you know. But instead, just down to how things worked out, I ignored it. And that's why it's my favorite console that I ignored. What do you guys think, though? I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on the 3DS. You know, is it viable to start a collection now and talk about your 3DS experiences on a YouTube channel like this? Is the 3DS one of your favorite consoles? Did you love the games? Did you love Street Pass? You know, tell me. I'd love to hear some of your favorite stories about the 3DS. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and I hope to see you in the next video.